Let's talk a little bit about equity as a race to mediocrity. Mediocre, mediocrity. Lowest common denominator of success. So not great success. It's not the leadership, not the best of the best. It's enough to get by. Maybe enough to get by. In any case, no more than enough to get by. So race to mediocrity. How is equity related to race to mediocrity? Well, you can think about it logically and fairly quickly yourself and come to the same conclusion by saying that if you're not hiring the best of the best, you're not hiring the people that have particular academic or professional skills to do the job the best that can be done, then the outcome is probably not going to be the best. You're going to hire someone that is going to get job done to a specific level and say, okay, well, it's good enough. It's kind of like me on carpentry. When I built the doghouse, right? The first doghouse I built, got done and looked at it, and the thing looked great. The thing was a mansion. It was a wonderful dwelling for our little dog. And as I continued staring at it for the next, maybe minute and a half, it slowly started leaning over to its side until it finally fell flat completely. Because as carpenters go, and builders, contractors, I'm mediocre at best. That's not my job. Not my job. Well, I guess that sounded a little bit racist to say not my job, didn't it? Well, it's not my job. And no one's going to hire me to build their house because they're going to get the same result as I got from my dog house that I had built very poorly, although it looked pretty good. It was good enough for me. It wasn't good enough for any animal that wanted to continue to exist, to live, right? So no animal owner would put a living creature inside the doghouse that I had built. So that's the critique. We'll talk about a critique to the equity concept as a race to mediocrity. Well, when we talk about equity, of course, there's a potential devaluation of merit. Not just a potential, there is an actual devaluation of merit. We're not looking for people who earn their way to the opportunity to be hired for this particular job, or to do this particular thing, or to create this particular mechanism that they want to sell to the world. They got where they were because of something like DEI, right? Did not earn it. DEI did not earn it, or didn't earn it. That's the biggest critique of the concept of equity. Well, some people would say that, well, we still need to look out for the people that have been given disadvantages all their life. We need to be able to elevate them in some way so they can fight on the same level as other people that are fighting for success, whatever that happens to be. So you've seen the picture, the famous picture or illustration that shows somebody on a soapbox and somebody on a crate and somebody on a larger stand and somebody standing on the ground, also that they, even though they're various heights, they can all look over the top of the fence to watch the baseball game that's being played on the other side. Of course, the question that first comes to mind is, how come they just don't go out and buy a stinking ticket, and so they don't have to look over the fence at all? But that's neither here nor there. The fact that they are looking over the fence and some can't see without getting a boost of some type, that's the concept of equity. And so it's kind of an appeal to emotion. It tries to get people to make a decision and say, well, of course, equity is the best and the most fair way of dealing with the allocation of resources, distribution of the money and the opportunities that are there in society for members of society. So those that are weakest among us, they get the same opportunities as everybody else because we've lifted them up in some way. We've lowered the standards, the barriers to entrance, so they can jump over the top of those barriers and get into Harvard or wherever it happens to be, the indicia of success in their cases. Resource allocation. homogenization of outcomes. By looking at equity, we actually devalue the differences. So the diversity, equity, and inclusion policies that get people involved or hired into a company, for instance, go away once they're finally hired, right? They're nothing special. They're simply hired into a position based upon the DEI, and then those identity group differences become unnecessary. They are no longer they've the DEI policies have acted as a boost to get people over the barriers to entrance. Once they're entered, and once they're on the inside, then they're just considered equal with everybody else. Maybe that's a continuation of equitable thinking. I'll have to think about that. That's probably worth pursuing a little bit more. So, striving for equal outcomes may unintentionally suppress exceptional talent or achievement. So the people that outshine the rest, they get overlooked in the interest of DEI, for instance. Risk of dependency, well, it kind of gets back to the idea that we were talking about social welfare programs. When someone is on a social welfare program that has been created to meet people in their specific areas of need, they don't want to get out of those needs because they will no longer be eligible for that social welfare. It risks of dependency, getting people who get those benefits or that allocation of resources from society that they get by virtue of DEI rather than merit. They don't want those benefits to stop, and so they want to continue on in their plight in order to keep those benefits coming. Many people argue that the key to finding a balance where equity and strong foundation for participation while merit and excellence are still celebrated and rewarded, they have to have two separate programs going on at that time. But DEI is kind of consuming the merit-based programs and outshining them, at least at present. Now, things are changing since Trump was elected to be our next president, right? Which happens in only about a week, a little bit more than a week. Yeah, a little bit more than a week. People are starting to realize that this DEI garbage is really, really destructive to our society. And we're starting to get back to the idea of merit and truth and reality, which is nice. It's refreshing to see. Hopefully we will get there eventually. The biggest tension that we can see in the idea of equity is that there is no room for individual achievement. Someone who, by virtue of the work that they put in, the hours that they put in for study. I mean, Korea. In Korea, somebody wants to get into a better university. They literally study until midnight. Kids. And then they make their way home, and then they get up and they go to the study cafe at 6 o'clock in the morning, maybe 7 at the latest. These hours seem totally crazy to the American thinking. To Korean kids, it's normal thinking. They'll do whatever they have to do to earn their way to merit inclusion and a university that is otherwise beyond their, well, expectation for themselves, or certainly the expectations of others for them. That kind of stuff goes away with equity. There's no room for people that try harder. In fact, people that try harder, well, they kind of get the responses that Korean government is giving to people that go to Hagwons, these study cafes and study schools, in addition to their schooling, in order to get ahead. The country, Korea, is actually demonizing these after-school schools, saying you should not be studying any further to try to get ahead of everybody else. That's not equity. So that's where equity goes way too far and actually gets to the point of hurting people. Economic opportunities for this generation will be taken away in the future because of the government demonizing the idea of studying harder to get ahead, which is kind of the Korean way. We can associate equality of opportunity and equity with different political systems or economic systems. Economic systems, let's say that instead of political, although oftentimes the political systems go hand in hand with the economic systems. But the economic systems we'll talk about for equity have to do with socialism or communism, where everybody is the same. There is no distinction between people. Doctors don't get any more benefits than the bakers. The people that bake bread get the same benefits as the people that separate Siamese twins that are joined at the head, right? There should be no difference. The outcome should be the same for both of these as far as status and economic remuneration, pay, and their place in society. It has to do with needs-based distribution. It kind of gets back to the 4 freedoms that FDR was talking about. Freedom from want, right? You should never go hungry. You should never have a time when you don't have money coming in. Even if that means that nobody can earn $1 million. At least nobody is going to earn less than $1,000, right? That would be reducing society to having equality on the lowest common denominator level. The race to mediocrity. That's what it boils down to. Equality and equality of opportunity tends to be a capitalist thing, which is most often associated with democratic republics or Republican form of government, where the people are in charge. Capitalism is a natural way of living out those natural rights, life, liberty, and property in particular, where we can maximize the opportunities that people have to mix their labor with the property that they own to make that property more their own, right? Capitalism tends to be based upon that. Capitalism and its equality of opportunity gives everybody an opportunity to mix their labor as much as they can with certain properties in order to attain business success or even employee success. Inventions, stuff along those lines. Capitalism prioritizes individual freedom and competition, and most importantly, this gets back to our last video, merit. Earning stuff. If you didn't earn it, well, it's a socialist thinking. It doesn't matter whether you earned it or not. You're a human being, therefore you, in order to maximize your dignity, you deserve to get what you didn't earn anyway. Somebody else must give it to you. Equal opportunity, then. Capitalism generally advocates for a level playing field when it comes to having accesses to resources to mix with our labor to turn our property into a going concern, into a successful business opportunity, or success measured by whatever dimension that we choose to use. Economic success is not the ultimate success, but certainly the people in the world kind of view economic success as the primary barometer of determining whether someone was successful in their lives or not. Other people would choose other things to measure or as a barometer in that assessment. Outcome disparities. This whole idea of disparate outcomes is a problem. We can say that some laws could be passed, laws against drugs, for instance, laws against crack cocaine, and those laws might be neutral as to any identity group, and just say that if you're in possession of crack cocaine, then you're in felony violation of the law. If, however, more black people are affected by those laws because they tend to involve themselves more in the use of crack cocaine, then that would be considered a disparate outcome. For the equity thinkers, they would say that there's a problem with the law, that the law, since it has disparate outcomes, disparity in outcomes, difference in outcomes, one identity group that has been oppressed in the past is affected more by this law than other identity groups. That's a disparate outcome. Then the law must be a prejudice or a manifest of a systemic bias against that identity group to begin with, and so the law would have to go or be modified so it has more effect on whites, for instance, than on just blacks. Why do we make the association of equity with socialism and communism, and equality of opportunity with capitalism? Well, because historically it's been that way. So we can look at the historical and the political context as it exists even today to see that these naturally go together. Socialism, by definition, seeks to make everybody equal, and capitalism, by definition, seems to make those that invest more of their time, treasure, or talent into a opportunity of one sort or another, gets better reward for that investment, right? So that goes along with capitalism, whereas socialism goes along with equity. I think that's pretty much all I want to talk about with regard to equity. Now you have an idea where I'm coming from when I talk about equality and equity. It's not everything, but it's enough to get started. It's a foundational concept, and a foundational concept that you can use. You can jump off of these concepts that we've been discussing for the past, well, now, including this one, 3 videos, to understand the difference between equality and equity and the implications for those on our lives, and how we should be able to view opportunities that come to us, whether we deserve them or whether those should come our way in spite of the fact that we didn't work for them, right? And others as well. I'll talk to you more in the next video.